Story time, it's my favorite time, spending time reading with you. Welcome to another story time with Gam Gam. Let's see what we have for today. Welcome to Story Time with Gam Gam. Our story today is The Tale of Peter Rabbit. And this story was written by Beatrix Potter, and this is an authorized edition. She wrote the stories and she also did the artwork. She had some amazing illustrations in her books. I hope that you will enjoy this story with me. Once upon a time, there were 4 little rabbits, and their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother in a sandbank underneath the root of a very big fir tree. "Now, my dears," said Mrs. Rabbit one morning, "you may go into the fields or down the lane, but don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Your father had an accident there. He was put in a pie by Mrs. McGregor. Oh, my, that is not a good way to end. Now run along and don't get into mischief. I am going out." Do you think they'll be good little bunnies? Let's find out. Then old Mrs. Rabbit took a basket and her umbrella and went through the wood to the baker's. She bought a loaf of brown bread and 5 currant buns. Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cotton Ball, who were good little bunnies, went down the lane to gather blackberries. But Peter, who was very naughty, ran straight away to Mr. McGregor's garden and squeezed under the gate. Oh, my! I wonder what kind of trouble he's going to get into. First, he ate some lettuces and some French beans. Very tasty. Then he ate some radishes. Not too bad, just a little spicy. And then, feeling rather sick, he went to look for some parsley, because everybody knows just a touch of parsley does help to settle the tummy. But round the end of a cucumber frame, whom should he meet but Mr. McGregor? Mr. McGregor was on his hands and knees planting out young cabbages. But he jumped up and ran after Peter, waving a rake and calling out, "Stop, thief!" Peter was most dreadfully frightened. He rushed all over the garden, for he had forgotten the way back to the gate. He lost one of his shoes among the cabbages and the other shoe amongst the potatoes. So that's 2 shoes that he lost. I guess that means he has none. After losing them, he ran on 4 legs and went faster. So that I think he might have gotten away altogether if he had not, unfortunately, run into a gooseberry net. Do you see that in the picture? That's what my berries need around them, to keep all the little birds and things from eating all the berries. And he got caught by the large buttons on his jacket. Looks like on the back of his jacket. It was a blue jacket with brass buttons. Quite new indeed. Peter gave himself up for lost and shed big tears. But his sobs were overheard by some friendly sparrows, who flew to him in great excitement and implored him to exert himself. Mr. McGregor came up with a sieve, which he intended to pop upon the top of Peter. But Peter wriggled out just in time, leaving his jacket behind him, and rushed into the tool shed and jumped into a can. It would have been a beautiful thing to hide in if it had not had so much water in it. Ooh, bit of a surprise. Mr. McGregor was quite sure that Peter was somewhere in the tool shed, perhaps hidden underneath the flower pot. He began turning them over carefully, looking under each one. Can you imagine doing that? Turning over flower pots one by one? Presently, Peter sneezed. Kerchoo! Mr. McGregor was after him in no time and tried to put his foot upon Peter, who jumped out of the window, upsetting 3 plants. The window was too small for Mr. McGregor, and he was tired of running after Peter. He went back to his work. Peter sat down to rest. He was out of breath and trembling with fright, and he had not the least idea which way to go. Also, he was very damp with sitting in that can. Remember, it had water in it. After a time, he began to wander around, going lippity-lippity, not very fast, and looking all around. He found a door in a wall, but it was locked, and there was no room for a fat little rabbit to squeeze underneath. Do you think he might still be full from all of those snackings that he did? An old mouse was running in and out over the stone doorstep, carrying peas and beans to her family in the wood. Peter asked her the way to the gate, but she had such a large pea in her mouth that she could not answer. She only shook her head at him. Peter began to cry. Oh my. Then he tried to find his way straight across the garden, but he became more and more puzzled. Presently he came to a pond where Mr. McGregor filled his watering can. A white cat was staring at some goldfish. She sat very, very still, but now and then the tip of her tail twitched as if it were alive. Peter thought it best to go away without speaking to her. He had heard about cats from his cousin, little Benjamin Bunny, which we did that story once, quite some time ago. He went back towards the tool shed, but suddenly, quite close to him, he heard the noise of a hoe. Scritch, scratch, scratch, scritch. Peter scuttled underneath the bushes, but presently, as nothing happened, he came out and climbed upon a wheelbarrow and peered over. The first thing he saw was Mr. McGregor hoeing onions. His back was turned towards Peter, and beyond him was the gate. Peter got down very quietly off the wheelbarrow and started running as fast as he could go, along a straight walk behind some black currant bushes. Mr. McGregor caught sight of him at the corner, but Peter did not care. He slipped underneath the gate and was safe at last in the wood outside the garden. Mr. McGregor hung the little jacket and the shoes for a scarecrow to frighten the blackbirds. Peter never stopped running or looking behind him till he got home to the big fir tree. He was so tired that he flopped down upon the nice soft sand on the floor of the rabbit hole and shut his eyes. His mother was busy cooking. She wondered what he had done with his clothes. It was the second little jacket and pair of shoes that Peter had lost in a fortnight. I'm sorry to say that Peter was not very well during that evening. Maybe the snacking, the sitting in the cold water of the water can, and being terrified out of his mind. His mother put him to bed and made some chamomile tea, and she gave a dose of it to Peter, 1 tablespoon to be taken at bedtime. But Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail had bread and milk and blackberries for supper. The end. That is pretty cool. I like that. That was a fun story. Peter had quite the adventure, but he got out all right in the end, even though he did things he shouldn't have done, and that did cost him just a bit. I hope that you are having a great day and enjoying your nice fall weather. You have a good night. I love you.